In this video, we have Douglas Murray having it out with Piers Morgan. Gets a little bit heated. I don't know if anybody has milked this conflict the way that Piers Morgan has, but, you know, fair enough, good for him. Dancing both sides of it a little and, you know, making sure that things get excited and agitated. It's good for views and, yeah, fair enough. But I have to say that in this clip, Piers really makes I don't know, it's almost like, I feel like the point that he makes here is beneath him. And Douglas Murray lets him know and says it's exactly how it is, as he always does. Let's have a listen.
Do you not feel that something has to give here, that this has to get resolved somehow, and that the only way to do that is, as with all these situations, you have to eventually compromise in some way? And the problem for Netanyahu is that people think he is completely incapable of offering Hamas any compromise, and therefore there is no deal. So the families of the hostages still there, and hundreds of thousands of protesters in Israel on the street to Tel Aviv right now, they are of the firm belief that it's his own intractable position on this, which is not going to allow any kind of ceasefire to be achievable.
But there again, if I can say so, Piers, it's the same thing, which is the presumption that it's Netanyahu who is uncompromising. We end up with this, again, because Netanyahu is a democratically elected leader, and so it's assumed that some pressure can be brought to bear on him. In my view, it is not Netanyahu who's uncompromising. It's Hamas that's uncompromising. They could have handed back the hostages last October. They could have not done this. I mean, they could have tried to build a state since 2005, when Israel withdrew from the Gaza, and handed the place over to them. Hamas could have used the billions of dollars and pounds and euros that British and European and American taxpayers gave them since 2006. They could have used those billions of dollars to build up Gaza. They could have made a booming, in the good sense of the term, Mediterranean paradise. They could have created wealth for their people. But you know what they did? They built down instead of upwards. They built a tunnel network bigger than the London Underground for all of those years, and they squirreled away the money, just like Yasser Arafat did before them, and they made themselves rich. Why was Ismail Haniyeh worth billions of dollars? Why does Khaled Mashal, why is he worth billions of dollars? Why are their children like princelings who live in apartment complexes in Doha? Because they took the money of Americans and Brits and Europeans and they took it for themselves and kept the people of Gaza in immiseration and poverty. There has been since 2005 a complete counterfactual of what could have happened. But the Hamas leadership didn't want that. They have said themselves they want to use Palestinian children and their lives in order to pressurize the world. These are fanatics. They want the death of their own citizens. In order to get world opinion turned against Israel. Again, how do you negotiate with that? The assumption always is in the West today, because we're so sort of fat and lazy in our expectation that peace is the norm, and that historically it's the norm. We're so full of our own expectations and presumptions that we always think that wars end by some kind of compromise and coming around the table, to use the cliche. They don't. Historically, most wars end because one side wins and one side loses. And one of the reasons, in my view, why there is this endless rounds of war in this region is because the Israelis are never allowed to win, and Hamas, in this case, are always allowed to draw. And I think that that is simply to set up the precursor for the next conflict. If Hamas come out of this with a fighting capability, then there will be another round of this war in a couple of years. So when David Lammy and others say what we need to have is a peace deal, I'd say on what terms? Everybody wants peace except for Hamas and the fanatics. Everybody else wants peace. All of these people in the south, these kibbutzniks and the party goers and others who were murdered on the 7th, all dreamed of peace with their Palestinian neighbors and brothers and sisters. Who stopped that peace being possible? Hamas, from 2005 and again to this very day.
I mean, Piers opens up the segment saying that, you know, the only way out of this is with compromise. And it seems like Netanyahu is not offering compromise. He's not willing to compromise. Compromise what exactly? Right? There are two sides here. One side is Israelis who just want to live in peace and safety and security. The other side is Palestinian terrorists, Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, who are hardly better, they're just a little bit more diplomatic about it, who want for the entire Middle East to be ethnically cleansed from the river to the sea, to be Jew-free. They want to kill every Jew. Hamas's charter states explicitly that they want every single Jew on the face of planet Earth to be killed. So you want there to be a compromise? So what? We should compromise and they're allowed to murder half of the Jews on planet Earth, God forbid? Like, calling for a compromise between one side that wants peace, safety, and security and the other side that wants to kill them all is, I mean, when you just say the words compromise, like, it sounds so nice and moral and mature and civilized, but when you call for a compromise between safety and security and kill them all, what are you asking for? Like, does he realize what it is that he's suggesting? What the compromise that he's calling for actually looks like? You want us to meet them halfway? Halfway so what? They could kill half of the Jews in the world, God forbid? Or so that they can just brutally injure everyone, but without killing them? Like, what do you want that compromise to look like exactly? What's a compromise of halfway between Jews being safe and secure versus Jews being actually ethnically cleansed in a complete and total genocide, God forbid? What's the compromise that you want exactly, Piers? Like, yeah, please explain. Asking for a compromise ultimately means asking Israel to compromise on the safety and security of its civilians. And if you're asking for that, I'm sorry, like, there is no reason why Israel should ever compromise on its safety and security, the safety and security of its civilians. That's not called compromise, that's called self-sacrifice. No one in Israel is asking for the Palestinians to compromise on their safety and security, just to stop murdering Israelis, that's all. So what's the compromise? You want Israel to compromise the safety and security of its civilians? You know, it's this thing where, like so many things today, it's just so unbelievable. We have this culture globally, at least in the West, of buying into narratives and supporting narratives because they're trendy and because that's the in thing and that's what's socially acceptable and socially encouraged, and, you know, it has this, you know, pseudo moral virtue, when everybody knows that it's actually a lie. And everybody, we have millions of people who all know that it's a lie, are all pretending that it's not a lie, and all going along with this lie together, all pretending together that we all don't know what's a lie, when every single person knows it's a lie. Right? What does Israel compromising with Hamas look like? Israel making a compromise with Hamas looks like dead Jews. That's what it looks like, plain and simple. And everybody knows it. And if you need evidence, the most recent evidence we have is October 7th. October 7th happened during a peace agreement, during a ceasefire, during compromise. This is what compromise with terrorists looks like. If you are calling for compromise with Hamas, if you are calling for a compromise while Hamas is still in existence and still has any sort of power whatsoever, you are calling for Jews to be murdered. Plain and simple. There are no two ways about it. And you can bury your head in the sand and you can pretend that you don't know it's true. Everybody knows it's true. And I'm sorry, but frankly, I don't know. Like, I feel like this is beneath Piers. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit, but to me, I feel like making this argument, which, yeah, the truth is horrible. It's very unpleasant. I don't, blame anyone for being uncomfortable about the fact that the only way out of this conflict is to eradicate Hamas from the face of the earth, and any call to do anything other than that is a call for Jews to be murdered. It's not comfortable, it's not pleasant, but it is what it is. And if the only way that someone can deal with it is to lie to themselves and everyone else as though this is not reality and we really can have a peaceful compromise with Hamas, it's a lie. It's an absolute lie, and everybody knows it's a lie. And we have millions and millions of people around the world, people in government, most of the people in corporate news. Piers himself is doing it here. Not to mention all of the, the useful idiot students, etc., that are walking around marching on the streets. All of whom know exactly what this actually is and are lying to themselves. You want a peace deal? If you genuinely want a peace deal, then you want the end of Hamas, because as long as Hamas is around, there's an absolute guarantee that there will be no effective peace deal in which there will actually be peace. There could be something that is labeled peace deal. There could be something that is labeled with the term ceasefire, which is exactly the status quo that was in place when October 7th happened. But if you want actual peace, then by definition, you want Hamas out of the picture for good, permanently eliminated. You can't eat your cake and have it. If you want safety and security and actual peace, you don't want Hamas to exist anymore. If you want a ceasefire and Hamas to continue to exist, that means you are advocating for a perpetual, eternal lack of peace. There are no ways to have these two things together. So pick which one you want. You can't say that you want peace and also advocate for a ceasefire and a deal with Hamas, because that equals, by definition, necessarily guaranteed a lack of peace. So which one is it going to be?